for our legal talk show. Today, I have my superstar guest, Attorney Vanita Banks, Masters in Tax Law, Cyber Security Expert, former President of the National Bar Association. And we have so many important topics to deal with, but I need to start off with the bombshell that hit the interstate legislature yesterday. Folks, here in Indianapolis, you're not hearing about this tragic set of circumstances that occurred at the State House yesterday. The Indiana State House passed a bill to take away involvement of community people in the selection of judges. Historically speaking, let me give you the quick history of this. Indianapolis, Marion County, is about 49% minority folks now. 28% are African American, and 14% are Asian, and then I apologize, 14% are Hispanic, and about 4 to 5% are Asian and others. So 49% of the county population is now minority. And the county is about 75, 76% Democrat, which means that if Indianapolis had an open competitive election, if we have 40 judges, all 40 judges would be elected Democrats, and at least 20 of the 40 would be Black judges, just statistically speaking. Well, the problem is the Indiana legislators, there's 92 counties in Indiana, folks, 92. Only in the counties that have a population of Blacks of about 9% or more do we have special rules. So we have 5 counties in the state where there are special rules as to how you elect judges. Those 5 counties are Allen, which is Fort Wayne, Lake County, Gary, East Chicago, Indianapolis, St. Joseph, and Evansville. So only in those counties that has a large Black population do you have special rules as to how you select judges. You, as a citizen, now do not have a voice as to how judges are selected. This bill goes to the process where this new committee can determine who can be retained as a judge. So you, as a citizen, would not have the ability to select judges. So it's a shameful process, and people should be mad as hell about it, but it's not being covered on your local news. And I was disappointed. I was watching different news channels this morning, and none of the major channels mentioned this tragic bill. But you need to know why this is so important. We fought, folks, long and hard, long battles to work to have diversity in our judicial system. Diversity is important because every time you go before jurors and things like that, we had a history in our country of racial discrimination, segregation. So with that background, diversity became important, more so than ever. Well, we have a government run by people who don't believe in diversity. In fact, they've done everything possible to make it illegal to consider diversity. You can't get state contracts. And so the net result is we're seeing a decline in the ability for particularly African American to be engaged in professional degrees, for example. So this process will affect you more than what you realize. But the bottom line, folks, the bottom line is we have to put up or shut up. So the next couple of elections, we have to get our voter participation up to 80% versus this 40% that we're doing now. If we did that, we could win a statewide election, and we could get rid of this terrible legislation that adversely affect our community. Now, having said that, Attorney Banks, there are so many news items this week, it's difficult to start, but we bombed Iran. So we're starting a war in the middle of the night without apparently consulting with Congress. And it appears, I was looking at the video when the current president said that Obama would bomb Iran because he doesn't know how to negotiate. And so now we have this Epstein process. You said 5-6 million documents now. and thousands of them apparently talked about the president. So now this incident of grown men having illicit relationship with teenage girls is just exploding in our political sphere. And a lot of folks are saying that maybe the motivation to start wars now is a gigantic distraction. But it's a terrible process, though, that we're bombing people and starting wars without consulting with Congress. That's disturbing to me.
Good morning, Attorney Lee and listening audience, and thanks for having me. It's my understanding that we already had a deal where Iran would not develop nuclear weapons. And most troubling, Attorney Lee, is the fact that once again, the president has failed to seek approval for this war from the United States Congress. He did, or Marco Rubio did brief the Gang of Eight, but again, the Congress and the American people should be consulted before war is declared. And so the people have not been told, Congress has not been uh, advised, and it's now we have a war across the Middle East. And frankly, Attorney Lee, based on what we've been hearing over the last several, weeks and months, this war declared by the president with Israel, because there was a joint strike this morning, as you know, uh, should have been predicted.
Well, historically speaking, let me give you the audience a background. When President Obama was in office in 2015, they agreed to a limitation on Iran's nuclear program, and that dealt with centrifuges, uranium, and heavy water in exchange for lifting some economic sanction against the country. Then there was an upset in the presidential election, and Donald Trump became president. So in 2018, the program designed to prevent them from developing nuclear weapons, he withdrew from the deal. So Donald Trump withdrew from the agreement that Obama had put in place to prevent them from going nuclear. Well, there was some indication that Iran had started developing a nuclear weapon, and they started negotiating. So in the middle of negotiation, in the middle of the night, we've started a war with Iran. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because you have the current president who withdrew from the same agreement that they were trying to reinstate. So none of this makes any sense to me. That
The
you're
question
starting to,
becomes, is this Iraq 2.0? And as you stated, there already was a plan in place. And the question also becomes, what is the plan for what comes next?
yeah, because I saw this morning, I woke up at 3 o'clock and they were saying that he want the Iranian people to, I guess, overthrow the government. That's never worked out very well. You have chaos when you have that. You never know what government is formed. It could be a government more anti-American than the one we currently have. So I don't know.
And the president stated that it's likely that U.S. lives will be lost. And certainly before you put our troops in harm's way, you require the consent of Congress. And the American people should be clearly informed. And of
Just
course,
one,
they've retaliated at this point, and we're seeing strikes across the Middle East.
a lot of people don't fully grasp the scars that war causes. I remember being in law school class and getting these statistics on Vietnam. At the time that we were engaged in this war in Vietnam, black male population in the United States was about 7 to 8%. Now, keep that in mind. 50% of the soldiers killed in battle in Vietnam in I think 1960 something, I can't remember exact year, were black soldiers because they were in infantry, and the infantry was jungle warfare. And of course, the Vietnamese were in trees and stuff, and there was a lot of death, right? But half those folks who have 1 year were black soldiers. And so the point I'm making is that when you start these wars, there's different elements. You have the bombing with jets and drones and things like that. But eventually, you have to have troops on the ground to go in and find people that are hiding in different location. And then you have a lot of casualties, right? You have all type of ways that soldiers get killed. It's not just being shot. They put the booby traps and things like that, right? Well, but the folks who will ultimately pay the ultimate sacrifice generally are not rich folks. They're just ordinary citizens that are looking for a better life. And the military give them a good venue. And you have people that are immigrants, for example. They volunteer to get citizenship. They put their lives on the line for a country that has turned its backs on a lot of them, in particular now. So I just think that starting a war in this particular case, based on the total circumstance, was just wrong. If you have an agreement and you violate the agreement by withdrawing from the agreement, now you start negotiating. In the middle of negotiation, you start bombing people. And I don't think it's fair to the American people to do that, because these wars are terribly expensive. And no matter how you do it, it's not just human life, but we put up billions of dollars. Every day that war goes on, we're paying out millions, if not billions of dollars to finance this. Every time you drop a bomb, that's an expensive piece of equipment that you're exploding. But in any event, that's my comment on that. And
We're hearing reports of a school in Iran having been bombed with at least 40 children killed or injured, in this war in the last 24 hours.
well, that's tragic. That is so tragic. Uh, there's nothing you could do to forgive, because that would be totally on us. So we're out murdering little children now. That's terrible.
And as Pierre says in the chat box, um, his words, wag the dog to divert from the Epstein troubles. There is
Okay,
no plan.
okay, Pierre, I got your wag the dog. How you doing today, sir?
Oh, good morning, Nate and Vanita and anyone else that's on. Yeah, it's you don't send 2 aircraft carriers and a whole bunch of ships over there to bluff. So the Iranians knew that they were going to get struck. I don't think they had any illusions about that they were going to get hit, especially given the situation that Donald Trump is in here with the Epstein files and all of that. It's classic wag the dog. President gets in trouble, starts a war somewhere to divert or distract attention from domestic problems, and rally people around him and get his numbers up. There is no plan. I guess the plan is to see how everything shakes out. Hopefully they'll do this smart. So far we've been lucky and not losing significant American lives. But if we lose an aircraft carrier, or if there's a significant number of American troops killed, he's going to have to put boots on the ground. And Iran is a different animal. It's the country's huge, and their military is a fairly strong military. So this is very dangerous times we're going into. And one other thing before I get off the phone, Nate, when you came on, did you address the legislation from the Indiana legislature concerning the courts?
I did. And I don't think, Pierre, I don't think most people in Indianapolis realize how significant a setback we got as Black American citizens. We've basically lost the same rights and privileges that other citizens in the county have. And what's insulting about this whole process is that Marion County, Indianapolis now is up to 49% minority, 49%. We're about 75% Democrat. Marion County, Indianapolis, the judges are about 25% African American. But the problem is that if we had open, competitive election that's enjoyed by 87 counties in Indiana, we would have 50% of the judges in Indianapolis would be Black. And the reason being is that we have 75% of voter participation of Democrats. So the Democrats would win every race in the county. So if there's 40 judgeship, all 40 would be Democrats. So they set up the...
Tell Benita what Representative Ed Delaney said about what Representative Ed Delaney said.
Oh, what did he say?
That? He said the problem is, and I believe I read this in the newspaper, that a lot of lawyers don't like going before Black judges. And if you look up the story on the Indianapolis Star, I think you'll see that comment. We talked about it yesterday on the radio. They just can't stand seeing a Black judge preside over a case. And these are the big law firms downtown. So there's still an element of race in this legislation.
I also heard, go ahead, Pierre.
No, go ahead, ma'am.
Did you finish your thought, Pierre?
Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say that I read that one of the proponents of the bill stated that they wanted to ensure that they appointed the best and brightest judges. So that plays into the point that you're making as well, Pierre.
Well, that was Cindy Carrasso, counsel. That was Cindy Carrasso, a woman who never appeared in the courts hardly. She ran for prosecutor. We looked up a record. She had never appeared in a criminal court in her life. She needed GPS to find, and she ran for prosecutor. So now we have a person who got a law license, but not a practicing attorney, who's trying to say who's the best and the brightest. Well, I can tell you for sure, she certainly isn't one of the best and brightest. It's a little bit insulting for someone who doesn't have actual experience in the court system to make these outrageous comments, and they quote her as though she's an expert. Folks, she is not. It's insulting what happened here. It's a tragic set of circumstances. People in Indianapolis should be mad as hell about this. We have made very significant process. In 1987, we worked to desegregate law firms in the state, folks. In 1987. So we've not had a long history of having segregation in law firms. So now what they're doing is turning back the clock. I mean, Black lawyers make up maybe 1% of the majority law firms in the state. Were they trying to get it down to zero? Are we going back to Jim Crow laws? And so the point I'm making is that these legislation are terrible. The fact that you're trying to deny minority citizens and have the same rights if whites get outside the county. I just think it's a horrible way to deal with this. And I think that people in our community got to raise up and meet the challenge. We got to get people off their posterior out to vote this year more so than ever. So don't forget that voting this year is going to be more important than ever before. And then the presidential election also.
Hey, Nate, one last
Yes.
comment. I tell you what, if we get in a ground war in the Middle East, we're not going to be able to fight a ground war with just the military that we have standing. People need to understand that the active duty troops that we have on active duty now, Navy, Army, Marines, Air Force, and all that, they're just there until the nation can build up and get more men in the pipeline. So what's that mean? Depending on how bad things get, we could go back to a draft. And I tell you what, we go back to a draft, you'll see everybody and their mother running to the polls to try to vote. They'll get engaged in. Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Well, it's, the thing is that we win the election, everybody forgetting about the fact that we've been bombing somebody every freaking month. We started killing the Venezuelan people in boats that could never reach America. We started murdering people at sea. I mean, it's just horrible what we've done. Having said that,
Contrary to the president's promise that he would be focusing on the United States of America, our people, and the economy.
hey, counsel, give us an update on the civil rights generation of talent, Jesse Jackson. What's going on with they didn't lower the flag for one of the important leaders of our lifetime, Jesse Jackson. Whether people like him or hate him, he did some historic things. Like he ran for president twice and got 6.9 million votes, and that was pretty significant. That paved the way for other minorities to be successful in the process. But what's going on with his funeral and it's going on?
Condolences are coming in from across the country and the world. On Thursday and Friday, Reverend Jackson laid in repose at the Operation Push National Headquarters in Chicago. And as you stated, the Speaker of the House denied the family's request for Reverend Jackson to lay in the Capitol. But several other states have stepped up, including the state in which Reverend Jackson was born. He will lay in state in South Carolina, and there will be services there next week. There will also be services in Washington, D.C., but the details of which have not yet been announced. Everyone is invited to attend the services of Reverend Jackson, including the services that will take place back in Chicago on next Thursday, March 6th, at the House of Hope. And on March 7th, there will be a private service that will be streamlined, which will be streamed to the public on Saturday, March 7th. Also, several states across the country have placed their flags at half-mast, including, of course, Illinois, Michigan, South Carolina, and the District of Columbia. And so the lines have been in the hundreds and thousands of people that are coming from across the country, Attorney Lee, to pay their respects to Reverend Jackson.
Well, thank you so much for the update because we need to recognize leadership. We're in a period of time now whereby leadership is so important. We don't see the advocacy today that we used to see from our civil rights group and things like that. So it's just a reminder to us of the days going by. Okay,
If not for
Imhotep.
Reverend Jackson, there wouldn't have been a Barack Obama and several of our elected leadership from across this nation. And as I mentioned before, the Reverend Jackson, he attended every National Bar Association meeting, and he we worked very closely with him on voter protection, diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives. We participated in his Wall Street project conferences, and stood shoulder to shoulder with him in many, many challenging times. He showed up for us even after he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. He continued to show up. And so many leaders across this nation have grown up and have been trained and are inspired by Reverend Jackson. And so, what the family is saying, and it is so true, that our work is not over. And what we can do at this time is to continue to carry out Reverend Jackson's work because it is a blueprint for our nation.
Well, thank you so much for that tribute. Okay, Imhotep, you had a question or comment for us today. Go ahead, sir. Imhotep? Hello?
Yeah, I was muted. I had to unmute. How can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you now.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Taking my call. Here I made some salient points there concerning what we have going on here. Got a wag the dog going on with Israel, United States, and what's going on with Iran. That's another subject for another day. I won't delve into too much, but got a large influence of AIPAC and the IDF and Larry Ellison and many others. It's real deep. It goes deeper than what even mainstream media, wants to talk about. Attorney Banks, I'm being from Gary and having relatives in Chicago, mother practicing law in Chicago. I used to go to school in Chicago. I went to Malcolm X College for a short amount of time when I got out of service. But a good friend of mine was by the name of Steve Coakley from Chicago. Steve Coakley actually used to work with Harold Washington back in the day, and then when Sawyer took over, they fell out. So that's where I'm from. I'm from the Coakley line of people. So I'll leave that there for right now. With Jackson, Reverend Jackson, yes, he was treated like with disrespect this week from Mike Johnson, House Speaker of the House. They just asked for him to, lie in state. I think John Lewis they had outside because I think it was COVID or after COVID, so they had John Lewis' body, I think, outside the Capitol. But they wouldn't even allow that for Reverend Jesse Jackson. But yet we have Charlie Kirk getting a Day of Remembrance, and now they're going to make a coin after Charlie Kirk. A devout racist. That tells you where we are. You talk about leadership, Nate. That tells you they doing exactly what they want to do. I don't know why people keep acting like this is a far-fetched thing. They're putting it right in front of our faces, what they're doing. They're playing right in front of our faces. And so Jesse the Body Ventura, the old Jesse Ventura, the governor of Minnesota, said something the other day, and it doesn't apply to black women because we know black women voted 92% for Kamala Harris, black men 77%. But he said he blamed women for this problem, white women. He blamed them. He blamed them because they had a chance twice to nominate a woman someone who would look out for their interests. He said that may not be the only reason why you need to vote or have voted for her, but definitely when you look at Hillary and what she was talking about and Kamala, your interests definitely would have been considered more. Women's interests definitely would have been considered more. And both times they advocated that responsibility and voted against interest. He said they listened to their men. This is Jesse Ventura saying this. He said they listened to their men and they advocated any thinking or any self-concept of what may have been their interest. Then we had the Dobbs decision got thrown out, and then you've got subsequently all this other stuff we got going on right now. I just want to ask you all, how do we? Trump keeps. A reporter asked him last week after the Supreme Court decision, why won't you just work with Congress? And he said, because I don't have to. That's what we're seeing. He basically came out and said he's doing exactly what George Herbert Walker Bush did when he lied about the weapons of mass destruction with Iraq and Afghanistan and all that stuff like that, had us in the war 21 years, and subsequently we didn't get anywhere because of weapons of mass destruction, the lie. So he said he's copying that playbook. But where are we? Because until November or until next January, if we flip the House and Senate, whether that's still roughly 11 months, he says he does not have to work with Congress. And Mike Johnson and all of them have just shucked their responsibility. We really have no government right now. All we have is Trump and whatever he decides. That's the real problem that I can see in the so-called democracy. We're not in a democracy at this moment. Thank you, Mr. McCall.
I agree, and those are excellent points. You're absolutely right. We've moved into an authoritarian government, and we're seeing it every day. We're seeing the SAVE Act, for example, that has been passed by the House, which would impede up to 21 million citizens from voting in the midterms and the upcoming election in November, the upcoming elections in November. And so the president has effectively abolished Congress, and Congress has determined that it's not going to carry out its role as a separate branch of government and check the abuses of this presidency.
It's a terrible day in our country when this incident of declaring war on Iran, we wake up in the middle of the night, and then you find out that the people in Congress had no idea that the attack would occur. And you kind of felt that something dramatic was going to occur when Bill Clinton appeared before Congress on the Epstein file. Then you start thinking to yourself, okay, now what's going to be the big diversion now? Well, the only thing you could do, of course, that a bigger diversion is start bombing somebody and start killing kids in a school. Now, that would certainly cause the people to pay attention, but that's the country we live in now, that we have one diversion after another diversion. And the bottom line is that the more I look at this Epstein case, Attorney Bank, the more sickening it gets. I was just thinking to myself, what these guys did, I mean, they should all be in prison. But then on the other hand, I'm thinking, why would these parents let these 12, 13, 14-year-old girls stay with a pedophile? I mean, I don't get that part as to how these young girls got taken advantage of by these older men. And that's the part that I'm struggling with, Attorney Banks. I just don't understand that.
Well, as we know, the president is a major figure in the Epstein files. I mean, every day, and we've been seeing this for months, pictures of him and the first lady that clearly demonstrate that they had a long-standing social relationship with Epstein. And we also know that there are 6 million records, and that Congress passed a bill that those records be disclosed by last year, December 19th. And that, and only 3 million of those records have been released. The president's attorney has already declared that the president, has been exonerated. And so my question is, exonerated, by whom? He's also announcing that he's been exonerated. He hasn't been exonerated, as several of the survivors stated yesterday, by them. And it's clear that there's no transparency, and that a precedent was set this week when Hillary Clinton, who had no interaction with Epstein and had no information to share, and the first president in history testified, before a congressional committee. And so a precedent has been set, and the president and the first lady now should testify. The president's name is mentioned in these files thousands of times. And he should, frankly, be volunteering to testify for transparency and for the survivors. I mean, that's something he should definitely step up and do, full stop. But as we saw at the State of the Union address, there was no mention of the Epstein files, and there also was no mention of the survivors, some of which attended the State of the Union address. Any and all uh, people that were engaged in pedophilia as relates to these survivors should be held accountable. Period. Full stop. Attorney Lee. So I don't go to the issue of, what their parents, were thinking or doing. Many of um, these youth, these children, it's called human trafficking. And Attorney Lee, you'll recall the tragedy that occurred with respect to, um, was her first name Hillary Busby in Indianapolis?
Yes.
That was such a tragic incident as well, um, where uh, a predator preyed on her online and lured her away from her home in Indianapolis, ultimately killing her. And so uh, this was happening. These children were being groomed and trafficked by Epstein and his accomplice.
Well, don't you think that even if uh, the current president went before Congress, that it would be softball questions, and whatever reason, I keep seeing that there's millions of more documents that's not been submitted. They're doing mass redactions of record.
Right.
It appears to me that the only way you get an objective hearing on this matter is that you have to put the Democrats back in power at both the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And that's the only way we're going to be able to get to the bottom of this,
I think you're
unfortunately.
absolutely right, because they would never appoint, a special prosecutor or special committee, if you will, that would be independent. And we saw uh, a Republican representative yesterday, when asked about whether the president should testify, his response was, well, the president never said anything to me to indicate that he was involved. Makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, regardless of what they were saying, I still don't understand what was the purpose of them subpoenaing Hillary Clinton. I don't get that part, counselor. It didn't make any sense to me. You know, what were they expecting to hear from her that will, other than the fact that they sent a subpoena and they had the power to hold her to contempt of Congress for not showing up? I don't understand why our legislators would spend the day interrogating somebody who apparently never met Epstein, at least not to her knowledge. You know,
I think for, harassment, for embarrassment, again, it shows how women are treated or mistreated. It was clear that she had no information that would be helpful to this investigation.
well, uh, isn't if am I wrong about this? Isn't R. Kelly in prison for having a relationship with underage girls? Is that I can't remember the details of why he was convicted. Is that why he's in prison now?
Well, Pierre says that the Department of Justice wasted no time going after R. Kelly and Diddy, as they should have, but they're slow moving or not at all on the rich, powerful businessmen, white businessmen across the nation, from every industry sector, from cabinet officials to tech to law. No accountability, no transparency.
I I don't like the idea of protection being given to men or women who engage in conduct that's this reprehensible involving children. I think that most Americans share the same view, and I would just hope that one day we get to the bottom of it and move on, because it's not going to go away by trying to put it on the rug. Because I noticed that the women are becoming much more vocal about this travesty,
The
and
bottom
it's
line is that the survivors will not go away, and until justice is served.
hey, now moving forward, this was a good week in terms of ICE. This week, I didn't hear any story about somebody being murdered or killed by ICE this week. And did I miss it? Did we have any? At least I didn't see it on the news this week.
What I have seen is that ICE um, is proliferating the leasing of warehouses across this nation, in uh, urban cities, to house up to 90,000 to 100,000 detainees. So while their activities are not at the top of the news, they are still actively engaging um, in the process of essentially building these prisons across the country.
Well, one of the things that I predict is that we're probably going to have more lawsuits against the federal government at the end of this administration than any time in American history. I'm thinking that I know that they had documented a couple of weeks ago there were 14 ICE deaths. But what you see on the news or the news feed, you see this gross abuse of power, and you see the battery on innocent civilians, Americans alike. And so this misconduct is not just directed towards immigrants, it's directed towards American citizens. And so the net result is in America, thank God we still have the Seventh Amendment, but it's hard to sue the federal government on a jury trial. Generally it's court trials. But you could sue in the Civil Rights Statute 1983 and get jury trial. So what we're seeing is that widespread abuse of government officials. And one of the things that's most disturbing to me is the fact that they conceal their identity. And I was disappointed that the people in DC could not get together and have a common sense reform to make these people show their face and identity like any other law enforcement official. I think it would be terrifying to have someone come into your space who maybe you can't tell whether or not they're in uniform, whether or not it's fake, and you can't see their identity. To me, that creates a hostile, dangerous situation just based on that basic fact. The one thing that's good about local law enforcement, they wear badges and they have their names on their uniform for the most part, or they have their badge number. So they're readily identifiable. But now you have law enforcement that conceal the identity. So I think that's a bad thing. Okay, we have a call on the line. Call, you have a question or comment for us today. Go ahead.
This is the guy. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Guy. What's your question?
Okay. Just wanted to say that agree with previous statements about the lack of accountability by this president. And I guess people that follow him in terms of what he's doing could almost imagine that he would wait until after the State of the Union address to make his move on Iran, and exactly what he's done. But in terms of maybe some bright lights on an earlier program on the station, Harambe, hosted by Dr. Tom Brown, former Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard was on, and he also is a retired colonel in the Marine Corps, but he expressed misgivings about the actions of this president and the fact that he has no regard for accountability and the law. Really, but actually he is an outlaw himself. So most outlaws don't respect the law, and he's performing accordingly, I suppose. Now, everyone knows that Iran and the Middle East situation is a tinderbox. Whatever your persuasion is, one way or the other. But this president seems to be lockstep with Netanyahu of Israel and his hardliners in the Knesset. And so this operation in Iran, I guess, as I said earlier, was pretty much predictable. Remains to be seen what's going to happen, but it is a dangerous situation.
Well, the problem, though, is that when you have wars and start bombing, you have secondary targets become victimized who have nothing to do with the conflict. Counsel had said that there was a school or something got bombed and you have 40 children that were killed. Why would anybody think that's a good idea to have children killed because of a war conflict? In other words, what did they do wrong? And so the answer is nothing. And so they become innocent party who's murdered, and that's what it is. You know, when you start killing kids that in schools and things like that, and so when you start bombing, there's secondary targets that may be incidentally affected, no matter how you do it. And so the net result is that we as Americans should not stand for that. It's just a terrible method of trying to resolve a matter that you yourself created. This whole idea about the nuclear, everybody forget that in 2018, as president, Donald Trump got out of the nuclear deal with Iran. So he created the controversy that now he's bombing them for. Obama put it in place and it made sense. And so why would he end that program? And now they start negotiating to work the details out. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of negotiation, you start bombing the country. And there's going to be a lot of talk about that this week. A lot of people, and let's see how many of the Republicans say what he did was wrong. Let's see how many of them say that this is the same president that got out of the Iran nuclear deal that Obama put in place. You know, so watch the news feed, and I like to see what occurs.
But this is Israel's position. You know, they all along did not go along with the deal worked out with President Obama and other allies. And it's interesting in the remarks made by Donald Trump this morning about this situation. He mentioned the allies, but you know, his actions, we won't have any allies with the work, with the things that he's doing. So it is interesting. It's very dangerous, and hopefully the people with common sense will step up and at least stand up against this kind of activity.
Well, thank you for your comment, Guy.
You're welcome.
And a quick follow-up, I look at the news feed. They were saying that the Israeli had bombed the school, and they're saying that 85 persons have been killed as a result of strike on the school. But they were saying an Israeli airstrike hit an elementary girls' school in Menab, a city in the Hamazan province of southern Iran. So they're bombing a school, according to his news feed, and 85 folks in the school were killed. Terrible tragedy. And they have a picture of the bombed school that you could tell is a school. And the question is, why are you dropping a bomb on a school with kids? No American should say that is justifiable type of engage in a war. Wars do have special protection, you know, like we capture people, we don't murder them, you know, and you try to avoid unintended targets. And so I'm concerned about that.
I don't believe that the American people voted for a war in Iraq. Obviously, the people weren't advised, nor was Congress consulted, nor did the people vote for ICE officers to be militarized against citizens in cities across this nation.
And finally, I don't think Americans who voted for these massive tariffs that was determined that most of them to be illegal. And so we've had a significant decline in job growth in our country. Unemployment is on the rise, and we don't know where it is headed. And then you start a war that hopefully it doesn't last for a long period of time, to drain resources away from our children and our road repairs and things like that, but you never know. But in any event, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us again this show. And we will now end our show, but Don't forget the important lesson we talked about today. Make sure that you encourage your neighbors and your friends that they got to vote in this upcoming elections like we've never done before. Don't forget. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you next Saturday.
Thank you, Attorney Lee, everybody.